Income Tax 2020, Practice Problem 1, Presentation 35, Schedule C, Business Retirement Plan, and Health Insurance Plan. Come in, relax with Income Tax 2020. Here we are in our Lacerte tax software. You don't need the Lacerte tax software to follow along. However, I do believe they have a free 30-day trial. So if you have access to a promo or demo version of it or any other tax software, it could be a good tool to practice with. We're going to be continuing on with our practice problem 1, our comprehensive problem. In the first section, we looked at the income items. Second section, we looked at the adjustments to income. And then we looked at the itemized deductions. Now focusing in on the Schedule C, jumping over to the Schedule C. We then took our source document from our client, which would be some type of income statement. We made adjustments to it where applicable, marked off the accounts that we think might cause the most problems, and then took those one by one, made adjustments as we entered the information into the system. Now we just want to take a step back and think about a couple other questions that you might have when you take a look at a Schedule C as well. So if I go back to the forms here, you note that some of the things we had problems with or that we always want to consider is that car and auto expense. Are they using a mileage method, or are they going to be using a direct method? Do we have to depreciate the car and whatnot? And the other being that office expense down here, the home office. Do they have a home office? Do they qualify for the home office? Are they renting or are they purchasing? And with regards to that home office, we did that last time over here on the form 8829. Just also realize that they could, if they own the home, as in this case, they could basically depreciate part of the home possibly with relation to the home office as well. We didn't do that here, but just note that could be something that could be included possibly as well. It might affect like the basis calculation of the home and impact possibly a sales situation, but just realize that that could be something that could be included as well. We went over that in a little bit more detail in the section about the home office. So if we go back up then to the Schedule C, some other couple things that just want to consider with the Schedule C. In general, you're also going to want to consider the health insurance. Do they have health insurance? Some states may still kind of penalize if someone doesn't have the coverage of the health insurance. So you got to tell the system whether there's coverage or not. And then you also need to see if the health insurance is related to work or not. Meaning if they have a Schedule C, it's possible you can have an above the line deduction, meaning Schedule 1, Part 2 for the self-employed health insurance deduction. Now, in this case, if you see something like this case, we have two individuals, because a married couple, both have W-2 jobs. It's likely that their health insurance, like with most people, is tied somehow to their employer, and they're getting it through their employer because that's going to be a more beneficial system most of the time. If that's the case, then it's unlikely that although they have a Schedule C, that they'll be taking this line 16 of the adjustments to income for self-employed health insurance, because their health insurance most likely will be through in some way attached to their employer. However, in situations where the W-2 income is low, or they have an employer that doesn't offer, benefits for health insurance, or if they don't have any other income, their Schedule C income is the primary income, it's more likely that you want to be considering this self-employed health insurance deduction as well. So that's one thing that's kind of linked to the Schedule C that you just want to keep in mind whenever you have a Schedule C. The other being the self-employed SEP or simple retirement plans. Now, these things could basically possibly add a more money that the owner of the Schedule C could put into, say, a retirement plan. And you can think of it all of them as similar type of things. Like if you were an employee, you got a 401k type of plan. If you don't have any other kind of plan, you have an IRA that you can basically put money into, which gives you a tax benefit. Or if you're self-employed, you might be able to have access to a SEP or simple. So if you're an employee, the reason the 401k is such a nice benefit as opposed to an IRA is you can typically put more money into it and get a bigger benefit by lowering the amount on line 1 of the W-2, lowering your federal income tax, possibly having matching benefits there as well with the employer contributing. And then if you don't have that, you have the IRA. The IRA is great because you get this deduction here possibly for the IRAs as well, although it could be limited based on other type of factors. But the income or cap limit on it is fairly low. So you have a fairly low cap on how much you could put into the IRA. Whereas if you were to have your self-employed income and you set up something like a SEP or a simple or something like that, which would be similar to a 401k but easier, it's simpler, then you might be able to put more money into the retirement plan. Now, if you're in a situation like this, where the Schedule C business has no employees, then of course the reason to set up a SEP or simple is basically simply to increase the amount of money possibly that you might be able to put into like a retirement plan. So that's another thing to consider. Can you set up a SEP or simple and possibly be able to put more money into a retirement plan and save money that way? If they do have employees or plan on having employees in the future, you got to consider the fact that the SEP or simple could then needs to cover the employees as well, which could impact the plans on how you're going to be setting this up. Because if you don't have employees, you're setting it up primarily to increase your own amount that you might be able to put into like a retirement plan. So those are two other things to just basically keep in mind with regards whenever you see basically a Schedule C here. Just make sure that I would just make sure to kind of check on those items.